So I'm Bradley here, and with One Bright Star TV show in partnership with KTV, and we're here just sharing about resources in the community for parents whose children have passed away. Almost 20% of the adult population has suffered a death of a child at some point in their life, and over half of those are from kind of infant childbirth, either during pregnancy or shortly thereafter. And we're here with Diana, the founder and executive director of IRIS, Infants Remembered in Silence. And so, could you tell us a little bit more about how IRIS was founded? You all help, parents who are grieving a young loss of a child.
IRIS was started in 1987. I had a son who was full term and stillborn, and there wasn't a lot of resources available for me at the time. I was teaching childbirth classes in Faribault, so it was a natural, easy transition for me to get information into the hospitals, just printed materials. So we started out with bereavement support packets. And then from there, everything kind of expanded on its own. People started asking for specific items, specific things that they were looking for. So we started out with the bereavement support packets. I was rather naive. I figured that we might work with one family a year, and very quickly discovered that the numbers were way more than that. So from there, we end up having clothing because parents said that they wish that they had clothing that they could bury their child in, and it just kind of expanded from there. We started out with just being just in Faribault, and then it went from that to within a year, people from different parts of the country calling, looking for information and wanting resources. So it's expanded quite a bit.
What sort of child losses do you commonly deal with?
Any type of a loss during pregnancy, so that would be ectopic pregnancy, stillbirth, any type of a miscarriage would be ectopic pregnancy, molar pregnancy, any of those, or general miscarriage as well. We also work with children who are stillborn, neonatal death, birth defects, SIDS, illness, accidents, any type of SIDS type of death or death related to an early childhood death. The youngest child I've ever held in my hands was 6 gestational weeks. The oldest one I've ever worked with was 14 years old. So there's a huge range there.
Okay, so a lot of different children.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned you have the support packets. What other programs do you have for parents who have lost a child?
We have a lot of things that we can do for parents. The IRIS program now is based in hospitals and funeral homes in a 6-county area. So it's Dodge, Goodhue, LeSueur, Steele, Waseca, and Rice counties. And in those facilities, everything is free of charge, and everything is housed inside of the facility. So if you go into a hospital there, all the supplies and materials are there. You can ask for an IRIS advocate to come in and work with you if you want, and that is somebody who has had training, who can work with the moms and the parents, grandparents, family, friends that are there, and also works directly with the child as well. So we can come in and help the parents. We don't want to do it ourselves. We want them to be able to create the memories. So we have them make handprints and footprints. We have them make sculptures of the hands and feet, and there's actually a sample of those up there on the table. They have clothing that they can pick from, so that'll fit a baby from that 6-7 gestational week range all the way up to full term. We also have a lot of blankets and hats that are all there for in the hospitals and the funeral homes for the parents to pick from. Everything comes in a box set like what's up there as well. So there's a blanket, a hat, a shell. There's a teddy bear for every outfit as well. And then some of the supplies that the advocate would need working with the family. If they choose not to have an advocate come in with them, that's fine. Those materials are still there for them to have. They still get the bereavement support packet, and they still can pick out a clothing set. So that's a huge thing to have right at the initial time of a loss. And to have things that actually fit and are the proper size is pretty important. And the fact that they get to pick out which one they want. It's not hospital staff saying, well, you're going to go with this one because it's a girl, so you're going to use the pink outfit. They get a choice of at least 3 girl outfits and 3 unisex outfits to pick from. So it's a pretty unusual program to have those supplies in hospitals as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. Do you make these clothing yourself, or how do you make them?
That's always a really good question that we have. The fabric is really expensive. It runs about $15 to $28 a yard.
Wow.
We did have a lot of volunteers who were doing it, but we started having some quality control issues because it's a knit, and so the knit is different than sewing on for cotton. I love to sew on cotton, not so much on the knit. I can do it though, but we have a lot of volunteers who will help with cutting things out and with doing the sewing. Is pretty much done by one gal in Faribault. Her name is Sherry Lee. She does most of our sewing for us, and again, it's a volunteer thing. The blankets, we have multiple sizes. You can see here, this one is 6 inches square is the smallest one that we would have that would go for that very tiny baby. They are all done by volunteers. Some of them are elderly people in the community who don't have access to yarn but have a beautiful talent. So we have parents who the blanket meant a lot to them, so they'll bring in the yarn, and then somebody else will make it into the blanket for them.
That's great.
It's really a neat thing. We also work with some of the women in the Waseca Women's Federal Prison who also do knitting and crocheting for us. A lot of elderly people all over the country are now sending us blankets, and then we try and disperse them out to different people. We work with an organization that's they do match up volunteers, and so we work quite frequently with them, and we're posting things, telling them what we need, and then the volunteers we start getting things in the mail. So it's pretty neat to have that happen too.
That's fantastic. And then you have this quilt over here, a bunch of quilts actually.
We have a bunch of quilts. You said bring things. I have lots of things to bring.
Yes, of course.
Parents like to have things that will help to memorialize their child. So one of the things that we did for our 25th anniversary was we put together memorial quilts. What happened was we figured if we did a 12-inch quilt, 12-inch quilt square, we could just let people send in their square. And it kind of mushroomed. And what happened was that we had way more squares coming in than what we could handle. And so we switched it then and went to a smaller, it's like a 6-inch square, and then we can just write the name on it. But anybody who wants to send in a square, we're still taking them. It's a 12-inch not finished square, so that if you're a quilter, you know what that means. And then what we do is we sew them into different quilts. So there's all kinds of different ones that are here. We ended up making 20 quilts this size for our 25th anniversary, and we're getting ready to start working on another one for our 30th anniversary. So the quilts are a huge thing. We have people who want us to send them out all over the country so that they can see them. They don't leave our possession. If someone wants to have them on display somewhere, then they have to have an IRIS volunteer there with the quilts. They're pretty precious things. When we've had problems at the house, we had a flood one time, and that's the first thing that people started calling in about was, are the quilts okay? It's a pretty important thing. So the quilts are kind of a neat thing to see. They're pretty impressive when you look at them as a huge display. I only brought part of them with today, but there's like 30 or 40 quilts that we have that they take up a lot of space.
Yeah, so
they're beautiful to look at though.
Oh yeah, it looks like it. Yeah, One Bright Star works a lot with memorializing children. It sounds like that's a really great way that's mobile and you can bring it around.
You can, yeah.
Do you have different events in the community that you may display those at?
We do. We have the big one that we display things at is, well, obviously we have fundraisers that we take them to if we can. Some fundraisers are too big to take them out because you can't keep them safe. The one that we take them to is a pancake breakfast that we do. It's always the weekend after the Super Bowl. And that event, we have people who come in who we're assuming that they're saying prayers for each child because they do touch each individual square.
Oh, wow.
Some of the quilts have 150 to 180 squares in them, and they might be smaller, and we have women who will stand there, and men, who will stand and touch each square. We're assuming they're praying for them, but because of that they get very dirty, but we want them to be user-friendly. We can take them to the pancake breakfast. That event, we're going to have maybe 800 to 1,000 people come through there throughout the whole day. There's the breakfast and the silent auction, and then there's also bingo, so we have a lot of people rolling through there. Things like the turkey trot that we do on Thanksgiving Day, which is a 5K run and a 10K run. We don't take them out because there's too many people there, and it's in the winter and it's on Thanksgiving Day, so you're dealing with snow and everything else. So they pretty much stay in for that type of a thing. We also take them out for the October 15th, which is Remembrance Day for children who have passed away, and we do take them out for that event. And we've been taking them up to Minneapolis, where we've been arranging to have the Lowry Avenue Bridge and the 35W Bridge lit in pink and blue for that day. So we do try and take those with us. And depending on the wind, last year it was too windy. I didn't want them in the Mississippi. So they stayed in the car that day too. But we do take them out for quite a few things.
Oh, that's great. And then I see you have a bear over there as well.
We do. I brought the bear because it's something that I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this are on Facebook and they've seen the things about the wedding dresses that are turned into burial clothing. We don't do that for Iris. We choose to use clothing that aren't going to do any damage to the baby's skin, that aren't going to be real harmful, with beading being real heavy and the lace being very, very sharp. So what we do is we turn them into teddy bears. There's lots of different sizes of teddy bears. Again, everything's done by volunteers. This is done by Libby and Carol. And they take the dresses apart. They sew them into teddy bears. Some of them are little itty bitty ones. Some of them are great big ones. But all the epaulets and things that are on here have to be taken off of the wedding dresses and then sewed back on. So they're pretty labor intensive, but they're a very, very nice keepsake for the parents to have. One of the things that we do with an advocate is they take pictures of the parents with the families and their whole family, also with the baby. And sometimes we have babies that are so small that they can't hold the teddy bears that we provide for them in the clothing set. And sometimes what we do is we have the bears holding the babies instead. And so that's what will eventually happen with this bear. It'll end up being with the baby, and we'll probably end up using it for pictures in some capacity. So it's a pretty special keepsake for the parents to have.
Yeah, it sounds like a great way to help them remember their
It
child.
is, it is. And it's a great thing for people to donate their gowns to. We don't take hundreds and thousands of gowns. We have a very large house that we're in right now, and we've purchased that house, and there's a great deal of space there. However, wedding gowns take up a very large amount of space. And so before somebody wants to donate a gown, we do ask them if they call and see if we're currently taking any in, because it's just gets to be very overwhelming very quickly. I don't want to walk up to the house and have 50 gowns sitting on my front step, which could happen very, very easily.
Yeah.
So
So it sounds like there's a lot of ways people can get involved with Iris through different sewing and donations of yarn.
Absolutely.
Are there any other ways that people can get involved?
absolutely, they can. If you're a bereaved parent and you want to come to some of our functions, that's absolutely something we would love to have you come to. Like I said, we have the pancake breakfast, which is in February. It's always the weekend after the Super Bowl. I brought my list in case I would forget anything, just in case you never know.
Yeah.
In the weekend before Mother's Day, we have a Mother's Day brunch that we do, which is something that's really a nice thing to do, be able to get together. Bereaved moms don't always feel like they're really a mother, and so they feel like they're pretty well forgotten. The same thing with dads, so we try and do things to make them feel included. And if you can do some of these things beforehand, before the actual day of the holiday, it makes it easier for the day of the holiday. So the Mother's Day brunch is a pretty popular thing to come to. In July, we have something new this year. It's called Heaven's Angels Motorcycle Run, which will be an interesting thing. I've never been to one. I've seen them roll by my house and stuff, but that'll be an interesting thing to have happening as well. And we encourage people to take part in these things if they want. In August, we have a memorial floating water lantern release. So we float water lanterns on the water. So they're done with rice paper. They're absolutely beautiful. It's a great thing to watch. It's can be very overwhelming to see those, and it's at night. So to see them floating down the river is pretty impressive. It's very, very beautiful. We also have a retreat that we take part in called Hugs. I don't know if you've ever heard of Hugs or not.
No, I haven't.
They're based here in Mankato, so I'll get you their information about them. But they do a retreat that we facilitate part of that for people who have had infant loss, and it's a great thing to go to. In October, on the very first Sunday, we always do a balloon release at Kinder Park in Faribault, which is a park that's been dedicated to children who have passed away. And that's a pretty neat thing to do. We have balloons that we release, and we have tags on them. And I know people have a hard time with the balloon thing, but we get most of the balloons back, which is kind of a neat thing. The farthest, I don't think balloons should be able to go that far. I figured from Faribault, if they made it to Northfield, that'd be a long ways. The farthest one we've had go away from distance-wise is to Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow.
I didn't think a balloon could go that far. It's pretty far to see. It's pretty incredible. If you watch on our Facebook pages, you'll see lots and lots of different activities and things that are going on with the balloon releases and people finding the balloons, and they are probably one of the most popular things that people check to see if where the balloon was found at, whose balloon it was, what was the circumstances. Right now we're finding a lot of balloons that are being called in, being found from guys who are out in the woods hunting antlers, just the antler sheds, and so they're sending back the antlers, they're calling in from the field. Do you think it's mostly men or women who are calling in with these balloons that are being found?
I'm not sure.
It's almost all men.
Really?
Almost all. We had gone for, I think it was 5 years with no women calling in.
Oh, wow.
And then one mom called in because her son was afraid to call us. But most of them are men. They're calling from their deer blinds. They're calling when they're looking for the antler sheds. They're out in the fields. They're finding these balloons and they're calling back in. Some of them have actually ended up on the front pages of newspapers in Michigan,
Wow.
which is a neat one. We had a little boy who found one in Ohio, and I'm not exactly sure how he ended up with this balloon, but he found the balloon and he wanted to know if he could keep it for a while, take it to school for show and tell. So he did, and the whole school, it must be a small school, the whole school turned to everything about Minnesota and everything mostly about Faribault and in our area, what resources we had and what it was like in our community. And so that was pretty neat that they did that. Then he called back and wanted to know if he could keep the tag till after Christmas because he wanted to put it on top of his Christmas tree instead of the Christmas angel that they had normally had. At that point I had to bow out and say you have to talk to the parents now. I can't do it because normally we keep them separate so that they don't know who the other person is, because I think it's a little bit, people feel safer doing it that way. So what happened was I put him in contact with the parents, and the parents said that he could have the balloon tag permanently as long as he took a copy of it and mailed it back to them.
Oh.
And my understanding is that they still hear from him, not every year. This is probably 7 years ago now, and he still sends pictures and stuff of the tag on top of the Christmas tree. So that's kind of a neat thing that some little kid got it.
Wow, that's
We've
great.
had other little boys find things and put them in their pockets. One little boy carried a balloon around in his pocket, the whole balloon and tag for the whole summer. And Mom he was old enough to empty out his own pockets, and so she never did. And one day she pulled out this goo out of his pockets and made him call in, and then I talked to him, and he sent the balloon tag back, and it was the first time he'd ever written an envelope out. So it was very interesting when you talk to people. We've had 90-year-old men who have found balloon tags, and they're very hard of hearing, and they didn't want us to talk to their wife to find out what was going on. He was going to tell us about it. So it was very interesting to see it and to see where they find them. We've had a baby named Rose that had passed away, and they found a whole bunch of balloons that were released for this baby that were tied around rose bushes.
Oh.
So you find weird things like that that really mean a lot to the parents.
Yeah,
A lot.
it sounds like that's a great way to memorialize
It
the
is.
children, but also, share it and have the message go out further.
And they all have a story when they come back. We have a
Yeah.
book about like that, full of stories.
Oh, wow.
That's just pretty impressive to read through it and to see. Very neat to be able to do that. Then also in October, we have on October 15th is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day. So that day is the day that we light the bridges in Minneapolis for the Lowry Avenue and the 35W Bridge. We're having the service this year will be at the Lowry Avenue Bridge is the plan at this point. So people can watch the Facebook pages and the IRIS website to find out more about that as well. And then in December, it's busy.
Yeah.
December, the very first Sunday, we've been having a holiday service of remembrance held at the Chapel of the Good Shepherd on Shattuck campus in Faribault. That chapel was built like 130 years ago in memory of a baby girl. And it's a beautiful chapel. I don't know if you've ever been to the Shattuck campus or not, but it's absolutely gorgeous there. That service starts at 2 o'clock, and anybody who wants to come is welcome to come. And we remember each baby. We read off each name individually, if they're named. Otherwise, it'll say Baby Johnson, Baby Smith, whatever. And then the chapel tower bells will ring, and there's handbells that ring inside of the chapel as well. It's a beautiful service.
Fantastic.
So we also do scrapbooking. We have opportunities for people to make quilts, and there's a lot going on. We also have support groups. We have 2 support groups each month. The first one is on the second Tuesday of the month from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. The second one is on the fourth Tuesday of the month from 7:30 till 8. No, from 7 till 8:30 at night.
Okay.
So second Wednesday and fourth Tuesday.
That's great.
So we're plenty busy.
Oh yeah, it sounds like it. Is there anything else you'd like to share about IRIS?
I just think that people need to know that the resources are out there. Sometimes you have to look really hard to find those resources. But I'd like to remind people that if you've had a family member or a friend who's had a child that's passed away, they physically do not have the strength to pick up the phone and call for those resources. So be there for them. If you're a true friend, you can call, and we won't ask you who you are. We won't ask for a lot of information. But sometimes it's easier for people to call in and say, hey, can you make contact with so-and-so, and here's her address. We don't hound people. We're not bugging them about anything. We'll ask them if they want to be on a mailing list. If we talk to them, we'll leave them a message. We might send them a card, but we don't automatically start hounding them or anything like that. That's just not what we do.
Yeah.
Pregnancy loss is a very private issue. As an advocate, I've gone into the hospitals and the funeral homes, and I've worked with people, and I've known the child's first name, and I've known the mom and dad's first names, but they don't want me to know their last name, and that's absolutely okay. So it's a very private thing, and people aren't real comfortable sharing. They don't know what's okay, what's not okay. But the bereavement packets have a lot of information in there that can be very, very helpful for people. And it's a great resource. I think it's something that's very unusual. You don't find other organizations like this anywhere in the world that we have found, especially not one that has these types of things that you give away. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, lots of wonderful keepsakes.
It is. The pictures are huge. Having the opportunity to give the baby a bath, to dress them, to take some wonderful pictures, to have the handprints, the footprints, and the sculptures, and lock of hair, all those things are just absolutely tremendous keepsakes for families. Very unusual. We do work occasionally with people from the Mankato community. If we get phone calls from the hospital, we'll try and come over and help those families as well. We have worked in the funeral homes here as well. The 6 counties that I listed before are our target area.
Yeah.
And it's really hard not to kind of go outside of that area.
Of course.
We also have a common burial that's for babies who are miscarried, so that would be before the gestational age of 20 weeks at District 1 Hospital. But if you have a connection to Faribault, we find a lot of people who want to have their child buried there as well. So that's something else that's also a possibility. If they go on the IRIS website, which is irisremembers.org, you can be lost in there for hours. There are thousands of poems on there. We work specifically with volunteers, so we had actually the poems came into be because we had a 6-year-old boy who wanted to get tickets to Disney World, and that was how he earned them. So it's great to have people do those types of things. So people want to volunteer, we're more than welcome to have them call us. Lots of opportunities for them to help there. Everything from gardening to painting to knitting and crocheting to picking up sticks in cemeteries. There's a lot to be done.
Yeah, well, that sounds great. I really appreciate your time, Diana. It's
Thank
been
you very
great
much.
talking to you. Lots of great keepsakes that we see here and lots of great ways for people to get involved.
Absolutely.
So we'll continue to bring resources in the community for parents who have lost their children, and we really thank you for tuning in and watching this with us. Thank you. For more information, you can visit irisremembers.org. You can search Infants Remembered in Silence on Facebook, or you can call 507-334-4748.